Everybody. Today's topic is literary terms or the glossaries that are prescribed in BA3 syllabus. So today I'm going to discuss with you the three literary terms. The very first is the plot, second is post-colonialism or post-colonial literature, and the third is narrative. To begin with plot, the plot is like in a literary work or a film or a story or other narrative. The plot is a sequence of events where each affect the next one through the principle of cause and effect. So it's basically, it depends upon the principle of cause and effect relationship. English novelist E.M. Forster described plot as the cause and effect relationship between events in a story. According to him, the king died and then the queen died is a story, but while the king died and then the queen died of grief is a plot. So this is the basic difference between a story and a plot. We can understand it through an example. You must have heard the fairy tale of that story of Cinderella. So consider the following points. The very first point, like the story goes like this. The prince searches for Cinderella with a glass shoe. Second then is Cinderella's sister tried the shoe on, but it doesn't fit. The shoes fit Cinderella's foot, so the prince finds her. So here we can say that the first event is causally related to the third event, while the second event through descriptive doesn't directly impact the outcome. The plot can be described numerically as 1 to 3, while the story can be described as 1, 2, 3. This is the sequence, that is the difference between a story and the plot. To understand what is a story, the sequence goes like number 1, number 2, number 3. But in plot, this can be described as 1 to 3. That is, 1 is the cause and third is the impact or the effect of that cause. The literary theory of Russian formalism in the early 20th century divided a narrative into two elements, that is the fabula, one is the fabula and then is the other is Suzanne. A fabula is the event in the fictional world, whereas a Suzanne is a perspective of those events. Formalist followers eventually translated the fabula and Suzanne to the concept of story and plot. This definition is usually used in narratology in parallel with Forster's definition. Then is the Greek philosopher Aristotle, writing in the 4th century BC in his classic book, The Poetics, considered plot or mythos as the most important element of drama. So Aristotle considered plot as the soul of a drama. Aristotle wrote that a tragedy, a type of plot, could be divided into three parts, that is, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Apart from that, in 1863, Gustav Freytag, a German writer, advocated a model based upon Aristotle's theory of tragedy. This is known as Freytag's pyramid. And Freytag's pyramid goes well with Aristotle's theory of tragedy, and according to that pyramid, he divided the drama into 5 parts. The very first part is exposition, that is the introduction, then is the rising action, then is the climax, then falling action or the return, and then is the last is denouement, that is the catastrophe. So that's all about plot. Then the second term is post-colonialism, a critical analysis of the history, culture, literature, and modes of discourse on the third world countries in Africa, Asia, in the Caribbean islands, in South America. Post-colonialism concerns itself with the study of colonization, which began as early as the Renaissance, and the decolonization, which involves winning back and reconstituting the native cultures, and the new colonizing process, which is an aftermath of postmodernism and late capitalism when multinational corporations control the world. So it is basically colonization and the decolonization. It includes both these things. Post-colonialism is the literature by people from formerly colonized countries. Post-colonial literature often addresses the problems and the consequences of the decolonization of a country, especially questions relating to the political and cultural independence of formerly subjugated people in themes such as racialism and colonialism. The consensus in the field is that post-colonial with a hyphen signifies a period that comes chronologically after colonialism. So people most often they confuse that what's the difference between post-colonial with hyphen and post-colonial without hyphen. So post-colonial with hyphen signifies a period that comes after colonialism, and on the other hand post-colonial without hyphen signals the persisting impact of colonization across time periods and geographical regions. A possible working definition for post-colonialism is that it involves a studied engagement with the experience of colonialism and its past and present effects, both at the local level of ex-colonial societies and at the level of more general global developments thought to be the after effects of the empire. So post-colonialism often involves the discussion of experiences such as slavery, migration, suppression, resistance, difference, race, gender, as well as responses to the discourses of imperial Europe such as the history, philosophy, anthropology, and linguistics. The major theoretical works in post-colonial theory include The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon, Orientalism by Edward Said, In Other World by Gayatri Spivak, The Empire Writes Back by Bill Ashcroft, Nation and Narration by Homi K. Bhabha, and Culture and Imperialism again by Edward Said. Post-colonial literature represents all these conditions and comes from various sources and inspiration. It includes works such as Samuel Beckett's Murphy, Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children, Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart, then is Toni Morrison's Beloved, G.M. Coetzee, Waiting for the Barbarians, then is the Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things, among many others. The next literary term is narrative. A narrative is a report of related events presented to the listeners or readers in words arranged in a logical sequence. A story is taken as a synonym of narrative. A narrative or story is told by a narrator who may be a direct part of that experience, or he or she often shares the experience as a first person narrator. Sometimes he or she may only observe the events as the third person narrator and gives his or her summation. So the modern narratives have a broader functions. If we talk generally, they don't merely entertain but serves as a way to communicate writers' moral, cultural, and political perspective. If we talk about the examples of narrative in literature, the very first example is Animal Farm by George Orwell. It is a modern narrative example known as a political satire. These are there are different examples of narrative. The very first is a political satire, which aims at expressing a writer's political views. It uses animals on a farm to describe the overthrow of the Russian Tsar Nicholas II in the communist revolution of the Russia before World War II. The actions of the animals on the farm are used to expose the greed and corruption of the revolution. It also describes how powerful people can change the ideology of the society. The next example of the narrative, which is also known as the narrative verse, is Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser. It narrates the adventures of Red Cross Knight in helping Lady Una rescue her parents from the evil dragon. On a symbolic level, it describes the mission of the holiness as helping the truth fight evil and thus regain its rightful place in human hearts. Then third is Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. It's a parody of romance narrative which dealt with the adventures of a valiant knight. Unlike serious romances in Don Quixote, the narrative takes a comical turn. We laugh at how Quixote was bestowed a knighthood in his battle with the giants. We enjoy how the knight helps the Christian king against the army of a Moorish monarch. So that's all about these literary terms. Thank you.